Welcome to our live stream. I'm just putting a link in here if you want to comment if you're on Facebook. I'll copy that for everybody so you can make a comment on Facebook. Okay, welcome. We're excited to have everyone with us on this wonderful December 22nd night, so everyone can enjoy our holidays. Merry Christmas for those that are coming up on Friday. And today we're talking about a wander in the spirit land. And this is still part 1, Days of Darkness, but this is chapter 3, Hope Wanderings on the Earth Plane. This is by the spirit Franchezzo. Now it seemed to me he was a pretty, in his own mind, pretty famous intellectual. He thought a lot of himself. He's very self-centered, just like all of us have been at one point in time or the other. He died. I believe he just married this wonderful young woman. He had never felt love before, and for this woman, he did feel love, and he felt even he was unworthy of her because she was so nice and pure. So, this is, he died suddenly. It seemed like pretty soon after marriage, and this is his story: a wander in the spirit land. Let's get right into it. It's chapter 3. Now, he had been in this space of darkness, and he had kind of seen his wife, but then he was never let near to her. And I think that was because that was part of his learning, that he was not allowed to be near her. It wasn't allowed to have comfort. He didn't believe in anything. He didn't believe in the afterlife when he was on earth, and he had to go through this period of darkness for a while. So I'll start. I know not how long this lasted. It seemed a long, long time to me. I was sitting wrapped still in my despair when I heard a voice gentle and soft calling to me, the voice of my beloved. And I felt compelled to rise and follow that voice so it should lead me to her. And as I rose to go to the thread, which had so bound me, seemed to stretch and stretch till I felt scarce its pressure. And I was drawn on and on till at last I found myself in a room which I could dimly see, even in the darkness that always surrounded me, was familiar to my eyes. Let me stop there for a second. When he said a thread that bound me, that was his perispirit that was still bounding him. He was right now bounded to his decaying body in the cemetery. That was the last time he saw her as she left the cemetery. So for some reason, even though he was officially dead, they still said, oh, okay, well, if you don't believe in the afterlife, you're just going to stay here till you'll see your body decay, and you'll know for a certain that you have a perispirit and a spirit. So he says, it was the home of my beloved one, and in that room I had passed. Ah, how many peaceful, happy hours in that time, which seemed now separated from me by so wide and awful a gulf. She sat at a little table with a sheet of paper before her and a pencil in her hand. She kept repeating my name and saying, dearest of friends, if the dead ever return, come back to me, and if you try, can make me write a few words from you, even yes or no, in answer to my questions. Now here she is calling him. Now so when people play with mediumship, which is very dangerous, by the way, you should really understand mediumship. You should not try to call spirits. You never know who you get. That's why, the part of the Christian theologist says, there shouldn't be any mediums. I understand their concern. That's why, but in this age where we're going to become planet generation, many of us more are going to have the ability to communicate with the spirit world. Hence, we need to be educated. Therefore, one should really read the Mediums book, or the Book of Mediums by Allan Kardec. And there's other books by Andre Luis in the domain of mediumship that one should read. And that way you really understand there are different spirits. There are high spirits, low spirits, malevolent spirits, foolish spirits, all types. And therefore you don't want to be fooled by a spirit that means you harm or ill. So the other thing also remember is that when she's calling the spirit, he was been in like this darkness tied to his body. He's confused. That's why you can't, when you see a spirit's confused and kind of not knowing where they are, they're not in a high spirit, right? They're not anywhere in heaven. They are down in the lower zone where we are right now, and they are not in good shape. Therefore, be very careful with them. Be very loving, right? Understand if they are confused, but try to be positive for them. Always tell them to look for the light. So let me keep reading. For the first time since I had died, I saw her with a faint smile upon her lips and a look of hope and expectation in those dear eyes that were so heavy with weeping for me. The dear face looked so pale and sad with her grief, and I felt, how I felt, the sweetness of the love she had given me, in which now less than ever dare I hope to claim. Then I saw 3 other forms beside her, but I knew they were spirits, yet how unlike myself. These spirits were bright, radiant, so I could not bear to look at them. The sight seemed to scorch my eyes as with a fire. One was a man, tall and calm and dignified looking, who bent over her to protect her as her guardian angel might. Beside him stood 2 fair young men, whom I knew at once to be those brothers whom she had often spoken of to me. They had died when youth was all its pleasure was before them, and their memories were shrined in her heart as those who were now angels. I shrank back, for I felt they saw me, and I sought to cover my disfigured face and form with the dark mantle which I wore. Then my pride awoke, and I said, has she not herself called me? I have come, and shall not she be the arbitrator of my destiny? It is so irrevocable that nothing I can do, no sorrow, no repentance, however deep, no deeds, however great, no work, however hard, can reverse it. Is there indeed no hope beyond the grave? So this poor guy, this has not had a great death so far. He's not had a great introduction to the spirit world. He's been left alone. He sees things that are awful. His outside appearance corresponds with his inside spirituality, which means it's not pretty. It's disfigured, and he thinks he's going to be there forever because that's what he learned as a child. Of course, he rejected it, and he was right to reject it. You're not in purgatory forever. It's always until you change your mind. But he will learn that as we go on. So now he's asking these bright angels, what can he do? Now, just as I want to make sure, these angels are bright, and you'll see the same type of report from people who have had near-death experiences or other visions. They'll see these bright angels, and they'll see like they can barely make out their face because they're all fuzzy. Well, the higher the spirit is, the brighter they are. And they're bright because they reflect the love of God. Their spirituality is so pure that instead of the atmosphere of love absorbing into them, it actually reflects back, and therefore you can't see. Now, if you were on the same level, if he was on the same level as the brothers and her guardian angel per se, it would look absolutely normal. They would be beautiful. They would be a probably perfect form and symmetry, but they would look like a normal human because they would probably reflect what their paraspirit they thought they should look. So he said, is there no hope beyond the grave? And the voice I had heard before my own grave, answered me. Now, this is a voice he didn't see. So most probably his guardian angel is next to him, but he can't see that. He can't see him because he's not high enough, or because his guardian angel doesn't want to now, but most probably because he's not high enough. He goes, son of grief, is there no hope on earth for those who sin? Does not even man forgive the sinner who has wronged him if the sin be repented of and pardon sought? And shall God be less merciful, less just? Hast thou repentance even now? Search thine own heart and see whether it is for thyself or for those thou hast wronged, that thou art sorry. And I knew that he spoke that I did not truly repent. I only suffered and longed. Then again my beloved spoke and asked me if we're there and could hear her, if to try and write one word through her hand, that she might know I still lived and still thought of her. My heart seemed to rise into my throat and choke me, and as I drew near to try if I could move her hand and even touch it, but the tall spirit came between us, and I was forced to draw back. Then he spoke and said, Give your words to me, and I will cause her hand to write them down for you. I will do this for her sake and because of the love she has for you. So her guardian angel was really nice. He said, okay, he'll be the intermediary. He's not going to let her pollute her body with the state of his spirit at that time. And so also remember this too. These poor spirits are on the earth, and I've been in mediums meeting where they are just confused, and then they don't know they're dead, and it's sad, and they think they're there forever. So have pity with them. And of course, these people are pretty nice to him. Then he said, a great wave of joy swept over me at his words, and I would have taken his hand and kissed it, but could not. My hand seemed scorched by his brightness, ere I could touch him, and I bowed myself before him, so I thought he must be one of the angels. My beloved spoke one more and said, are you here, dearest friend? I answered, yes. And then I saw the spirit put his hand on her. And when he did, so her hand wrote the word yes. Slowly and unsteadily it moved. So here is, it's not psychographing per se, but it's kind of moving, them moving the hand. So there's psychographing where they put ideas. There's talking where a spirit will actually go kind of in your body and take over your vocal cord, spoke as they will. There's all sorts of communication between spirits, between the spirit and the human. She goes, ah, how she smiled. And again, she asked me a question. And as before, her whole hand traced out my answer. She asked if there were anything she could do for me, any wish of mine that she could help me carry out. And I said, no, not now. I would go away and torment her no more with my presence. I would let her forget me now. My heart was so sore as I spoke, so bitter and how sweet to me was her reply, how it touched my soul to hear her say, do not say that to me, for I would ever be your truest, dearest friend as I was in the past. And since you died, my one thought has been to find you and speak with you again. And I answered, I called out to her, it has been only my wish also. She then asked if I'd come again, and I said yes, for where would I have not gone for her? What would I have done? Then the bright spirit said she must write no more that night. He made her hand write that also, and said she should go to rest. So then I felt myself drawn away once more back to my grave and to my earthly body in that dark churchyard, but not to the same hopeless sense of misery. In spite of everything, a spark of hope had risen in my heart, and I knew I should see and speak with her again. But now I found I was not alone there. Those two spirits who were her brothers had followed me and now spoke. I shall not state all they said. Suffice it to say, they pointed out to me how wide was now the gulf between their sister and myself, and asked if I desired to shadow all her young life with my dark presence. If I left her now, she would in time forget me, except as one who had been a dear friend to her. She could always think tenderly of my memory, and surely if I loved her truly, I would not wish to make all her young life lonely and desolate for my sake. I replied that I loved her and could never bear to leave her, never bear to think of any other loving her as I had done. Then they spoke of myself and my past, and asked if I dared think of linking myself with her pure life, even in the misty fashion to which I had still hoped to do. How could I hope that when she died, I should meet her? She belonged to a bright sphere to which I could not hope for a long time to rise. And would it not be better for her and nobler, more truly loving of me to leave her to forget me and to find what happiness in life could yet be given to her, rather than to seek to keep alive a love that could only bring sorrow, could only bring her sorrows? So again, these brothers who are in the high plane because they're shining and bright are trying, are kind of mining him, right? They're saying, do you possess enough character to let this beloved, wonderful woman that you had loved, but should not be sunk to your level, to not be tied to you, to be given a chance to go amongst the earth and live what she needs to, go through the trials she needs to? Does he have enough character to do that? So then he said, I said faintly that I thought she loved me. And they said, yes, she loves you, as she herself has idealized your image in her mind, and as she in her innocence has painted your picture. Do you think if she knew all of your story, she would love you? Would she not shrink back in horror from you? Of course, say now, these spirits know everything. They know his whole history. They can read his mind and know what he's thinking. He doesn't know that yet. When they can look into him, they can see his past. They can see everything. Tell her the truth. Give her the choice of freedom from your presence, and you will have acted a nobler part and shown a truer love than in deceiving her and seeking to tie her to a being like yourself. Well, if you truly love her, think of her and her happiness and what it will bring it, not of yourself alone. So then he wrote, then the hope within me died out, and I bowed my head to the dust in shame and agony, for I knew that I was vile and in no way fit for her. He knew that when he was alive, too, by the way. And I saw as in a glass what her life might still be freed from mine. She might know happiness, yet with another more worthy than I had been, while with my love I would only drag her down into the sadness with me. For the first time in my life, I put the happiness of another before my own, and because I so loved her and would have had her happy, I said to them, let it be so then. Tell her the truth, and let her say but one kind word to me in farewell, and I will go from her and darken her life with the shadow of mine no more. So let's think about what he said, because this is amazing. They gave a vision to him of what her life would be without him, and what her life would be still trying to communicate with him. Now, how can that be? Now, there are near-death experiences where people have reported the same thing. Now, this was done in, I think, in the very late 1800s or early 1900s. This book was written. This book was psychographed by the medium. So, and then in NDEs in the year 2000, people were saying the same thing. I died, and I was given a chance to go back. This one guy, he died, and he said, "Look, you can still live. You'll be in pain. You know, we can keep you living, but you'll have periods of pain in your life. But your father and your mother and your sister, they really needed you on earth." And they showed him what his life would be if he was on earth. His father and mother didn't get divorced. His sister was successful. Versus if he wasn't on earth, his father and mother got divorced. His father died early. His sister went into drugs. So how can that be? How can that be without a completely organized spirit world? Think about this for a second. If this is where, if you really dive deep into whatever you read about the spirits in the spirit world, and you think about the ramifications that in a moment of time, they could show you an alternate reality, right? They could say, okay, this is what happens if this is what happens if X, or if Y. How can that be without this immense, complicated organization that can do, like here on Earth, where we do multiple Monte Carlo simulations to see what happens with different financial decisions, right? All that, and yet they can create thoughts, a whole reality that he can see. Think of the computing power. This is why I say the spirit world. We really are kind of more like avatars in a very sophisticated program on Earth. And what we think is flesh, and what we think that we touch and feel, and when we are sick, is all programmable, because our life goes through certain trials and tribulations to give us the stimuli we need to change our character and personality. And we are, in fact, the spirits call us a lot. They call us personalities, right? Because you can't call a spirit, because a spirit can look just like a flame. You can't call a spirit, oh, like the tall dark one, or the one that's right-handed, or the one with green eyes. No, you look like whatever you want to on your paraspirit. So if you had green eyes and you had blonde hair, and if you wanted to have dark hair and blue skin, you can have that. That's up to you. That's up to your thoughts of how you want to look. So they can't describe you. They say, oh, this is that personality. And everyone has a unique name, which that's why even in the Bible, and you hear like people say, you want the name of the spirit, because when you have that name of the spirit, you can actually contact that person, probably wherever they are, no matter how many physical miles you think they are in the logical construct of where we survive. So think about that for a second. They can do that. And so you think they can't do other things? You think that they can't guide you in what you need to do? Do you think they can't give you trials and tribulations that will make you respond to the exact stimuli they want you to in order to change that character flaw, even though you don't know your past, right? Because people always ask me, well, how can I learn if I don't know my past? And I say, well, they're smart. And this is just one clue. Now let me go on. So we went back to her, and I saw her as she slept, exhausted with her sorrow for me. I pleaded that they would let me give her one kiss, the first and last I would ever give. But they said no, that was impossible, for my touch would snap forever the thread that held her still to life. Then they awoke her and made her write down their words, while I stood by and heard each word fall as a nail in the coffin where they were burying my last hope forever. She, as in one in a dream, wrote on, till at last the whole shameful story of my life was told, and I had but to tell her myself that all was forever at an end between us, and she was free from my sinful presence and my selfish love. I said adieu to her as drops of blood run from my heart. Those were those words, and as ice they fell upon her heart and crushed it. Then I turned and left. But I know not how, I know not. But as I went, I felt the cord that had tied me to my grave in my earthly body snap, and I was free, free to wander where I would, alone in my desolation. So he had done, for his first time, as he said in his life, a selfless act. And therefore, his reward, he didn't have to stand by his body while it was being decomposed. Now, as I said, the spirit world knows what we're doing on earth. They also know where they also track and analyze you as a spirit, especially Franchezzo as an errant spirit. An errant spirit is one that roams around the lower zone or below. They track him, they know. So this guardian angel probably, gave the order, or some higher said, okay, let's free him from that. He doesn't have to go through that. He did something selfless. He's just got a step on the road ahead. This is why everything in life is about being spiritually more mature. That doesn't mean I'm saying sell everything and walk everywhere and abandon all your responsibilities. No, but balance them. This is what's important. You're an immortal spirit. You're only going to be on earth for 80 years, let's say, on average. It's nothing compared to millions of years. And then also, in those 80 years, can you learn something? Can you ascend spiritually so you're not on the lower zone like Franchezzo? Or do you go like the brothers and the other spirit? Do you go into heaven and be with friends? So let's go on. So then she says, all me. While I write the words, the tears of thankfulness are in my eyes again, and I almost break down in trying to write them. Then she, whom we had deemed so weak and gentle that we had but to decide for her, she called me back with all the force of love none dare oppose, and called me back to her. She said she could never give me up as long as I had love for her. Let your past be what it might. Let you be sunk now, even to the lowest depth of hell itself, I will still love you. Still seek to follow you and claim my right, the right of my love, to help and comfort and cherish you. Till God in his mercy shall have pardoned your past, and you shall be raised up again. And then it was that I wrote down and wept, as only a strong, proud man can weep, whose heart had been wrung and bruised and hardened, and then touched by the soft, tender touch of a loving hand, till the tears must come to his relief. I went back to my love and knelt down beside her, and though they would not let me touch her, the calm, beautiful spirit who was her guardian whispered to her that her prayer was answered, and that she should indeed lead me back to the light. And so I left my darling, and as I passed away, I saw a white angel's form hover over her to give her strength and comfort, who was herself my angel of light. I left her thus with those spirits, and went forth to wander till her voice should call me to her side again. So again, he's seeing this woman, this wonderful woman with the two brothers. She must have been a wonderful spirit before she even went to earth. And she probably had a connection with this man even beforehand. And her aim was probably to come and try to reform him. But she probably didn't understand that she was really going to reform him while she was incarnated and he was back in the spirit world. It probably didn't happen as she envisioned, or it might have. Who knows what they told her, or how she actually planned this beforehand. So, and she's a wonderful person. I wish I was like that at her, at her young age. After the short troubled sleep into which those bright spirits had put her, my darling awoke the next day and went to visit a kind, good man whom she had discovered in her efforts to find some way by which she might reach me even beyond the grave. If it might be that what she had been told about those people who were called spiritualists were really true, she had hoped through their aid to speak again with me, and prompted by those who were watching over her, she had searched out this man who was known as a healing medium. And by him, she'd been told that if she herself tried, she could write messages from the so-called dead. This I did not learn till later. At the time, I only felt myself summoned by the voice of her whose power over me was so great, and in obedience to it, I found myself standing in which I could dimly distinguish to be a small room. I say dimly because all was still dark to me, save only where the light around my darling shone as a star and showed faintly what was near. It was to this good man of whom I speak that she had gone, and it was her voice speaking to him that had drawn me. She was telling him what had passed the night before, and how much she had loved me, and how she would gladly give all her life if by doing so she could comfort and help me. And that man spoke such kind words to her. From my heart, I thank and still thank him for them. He gave me so much hope. He pointed out to my dear love that the ties of the earth body are broken at its death, and I was free to love her, and she was free to return that love, that she herself, better than in any other, could in truth help to raise me. For her love would give me comfort and hope as nothing else would, and would cheer my path of repentant effort. And she had now the best of rights to give it. My love for her had been so pure and true a passion, while hers for me was stronger than death itself, since it had overcome the barrier of death. He was so kind, this man. He helped me speak to her and to explain many things I could not have done the night before, when my heart was so sore and full of pride. He helped me to tell what of excuse there had been for me in the past, though I owed that nothing can truly excuse our sins. He let me tell her that for me in the past, though I owe that nothing can truly, he let me tell her that in spite of all the wrongs of my past, she had been to me as one sacred, loved with a love that I had given to none but herself. He soothed and strengthened her with a kindness for which I blessed him even more than for his helping to myself. And when she left him at last, I too went with her to her home in the light of hope in both our hearts. So she went to a medium. He was able to talk more effectively through that medium than he was to her, of course. And he's right. And he said this love, she could help him more than if she was in the spirit world. Now, why is that so? How could she help him more as an incarnate than if she was a spirit like him, like her brothers, right? Wouldn't you think that if she was on the same level, she was the spirit level, she could follow him around and do things? Well, there's a good reason for that. And the reason is someone like Franchezzo, who doesn't think of the spirit world as his forever home, which it is. He thinks as earth, as the true home. And therefore he looks to a person physically on earth as the gold standard, let's say. And you see this in mediums meetings. And this is why there are mediums meetings, not just for past messages back and forth, but on spiritual centers, there's medium meetings just to help spirits like Franchezzo who are confused and need guidance. And you think, well, why don't they listen to the smarter spirits in the world? Because just like children, right? Children will tend to listen to other children before they listen to their parents, because the parents are one thing. Parents are, they're way up there, and who knows what they're talking about. But the child can understand and feel empathy with another child. Whereas Franchezzo still considers himself to be a human, but he's just an unlucky one because he died. And therefore, he's more connected to her, and what she wants and what she says has a higher priority in his life at this moment, when he's still a bit uneducated. As spirits get higher, they leave that. They know, hey, you're on earth, you're in this temporary body, you're going through stuff. Good for you. God bless you. So I'll carry on. And then when we got there, we went back home. We got there, I found that a fresh barrier was raised up by those two spirit brothers and others to whom she was dear. An invisible wall surrounded her through which I could not pass. And though I might follow her about, I could never get very near. Then I said to myself that I would go back to the kind man and see if he would help me. My wish seemed to carry me back, for I soon found myself there again. So again, he didn't even know his power. Right now, he moved by the speed of thought. And so he's just like exploring that, moved by this, he's like, somehow I got there. It's like when he was called, somehow he was like taken from the graveyard, put in her house, and all of a sudden, no, I want to go back to this guy, and all of a sudden he was there. He's already seen the power of thought. He was at once conscious of my presence, and as strange as it seemed, I found that he could understand much, although not all, that I said to him. He gathered the sense of what I wanted to say and told me many things I shall not set down here because they concern only myself. He assured me that if I were only patient, all would be well in time. And though the relations may build their spiritual wall around my love, her will would at all times draw me through it to her, and nothing could shut out her love from me. No walls could keep that back. If I would seek now to learn the things of the spirit and to work to advance myself, the gulf between us would disappear. Comforted, I left him and wandered away again. I knew not where. So, of course, very true words. This man is amazing. So, yes, he is the spirit. Franchezzo is a very frail, unpure person, as all of us. And he was going to say, look, if you want to get closer, right, the law of affinity, is like. And right now, her brothers can keep him away. They can create energy fields because Franchezzo's pretty primitive and pretty weak spiritually. He has to raise himself up to be closer to her level in order for him to really communicate and be with her. So now he's starting to learn some things. I was now beginning to be dimly conscious that there were other beings like myself flirting about near me in the darkness, though I could scarce see them. I was so lost and lonely that I thought of going back to my grave again, as it was the spot most familiar to me. And my thoughts seemed to take me back, for soon I was there once more. The flowers that my love had brought me were faded now. She had not been there for 2 days. Since speaking to me, she seemed to forget the body that was laid away in the earth. And this to me was well. I would have had it so. It is well for her to forget the dead body and think only of the living spirit. Even those withered flowers spoke of her love, and I tried to pick one up, a white rose, to carry away with me. I found I could not lift it, could not move it in the least. My hand passed through it as though it was but the reflection of a rose. Again, here's the spirit. And think of this guy. Think that you're in the spirit, and your hand feels good. You feel like you're a person, right? And yet you can't grab that rose. That's because it's in a different plane of existence, right? You are much less ratio of mass material to energy, and we say mass to density. So now he is much less dense than a human on Earth. Now think of those brothers who are even much less dense than he, and they are composed of more energy. That's why sometimes if his guardian angel is around, he can't even see him. So I moved round to where there was a white marble cross at the head of the grave, and I saw there the names of my beloved one's 2 brothers. Then I knew what she had done in her love for me. She had laid my body next to rest, besides those she had loved best of all. My heart was so touched that again I wept, and my tears fell like dew upon my heart and melted away its bitterness. I was so lonely that at last I rose and wandered away again amongst other dark wandering shapes. Few of them even turned to look at me. Perhaps, like myself, they scarcely saw. Presently, however, 3 dark forms, which seemed like 2 women and a man, passed near me, and then turning and followed. The man touched my arm and said, "Where are you bound for? Surely you are newly come over to the side. Or you would not hurry on." So None hurry here, because we all know we have eternity to wander in. Then he laughed a laugh so cold and harsh in tone it made me shudder. One of the women took my arm on one side, on the other one said, "Come away with us. We'll show you how to you may enjoy life even though you are dead. If we have not got bodies to enjoy ourselves, though, we will borrow them from some mortals for a little. For a little, come with us, and we'll show you all that pleasure, and is not ended yet." So I think he's turned into some pretty low lives, right? So this is again, they think it's eternal. That's part of their punishment for, I should say, education, not punishment. Is they don't have any concept of time. They have no idea that if they would change their character and attitude, they would rise. But they're not ready. They're not there yet. They will be in time. They may have to be reincarnate a couple more times. So he goes, in my loneliness, I was glad to have some being to speak to. That although they were all three most repulsive looking, of course, because their outside looks like their inside, the women, to my mind, seemed even more so than the man. I felt inclined to let them lead me away and see what would happen, and I'd even turn to accompany them when off in the dim distance, like a picture traced in light on a black sky, I saw a spirit form of my pure sweet love. Her eyes were closed as I'd seen her in my first vision, but before her hands were stretched out to me, and her voice felt like a voice from heaven on my ear saying, "Oh, take care, go not with them, they are not good, and their road leads only to destruction." Then the vision was gone, and as one waking from a dream, I shook those three persons from me and hurried away again in the darkness. How long and how far I wandered, I knew not. I kept hurrying on to get away from the memories that haunted me, and I seemed to have all space to wander in. So she probably was dreaming. She was probably sleeping at the time, and she had asked probably to watch over him, and she saw him make a bad decision, and she spoke to him. But they wouldn't let her get too much on him. He needs to learn things himself. At last I sat down on the ground to rest, for there seemed to be ground solid enough to rest upon. And while I sat there, I saw glimmering through the darkness a light. As I drew near it, I saw a great haze of light radiating from a room which I could see, but it was so bright it hurt my eyes to look upon it, as it would looking at the noonday sun on earth has done before. I could not bear it and would have turned away when a voice said, "Stay, weary wanderer. Here are only kind hearts and helping hands for you, and if you would see your love, come in, for she is here, you may speak with her." Then I felt a hand, for I could see no one, drew my mantle over my head to shut out the brightness of the light, and then lead me into the room and saw me and seat me onto a large chair. I was so weary, and so glad to rest. In this room there was such peace, it seemed to me that I had found my way to heaven. After a while, I looked up and saw two gentle, kindly women who were like angels to my eyes, and I said to myself, "I've come near heaven, surely." Again, and I looked, and by this time my eyes seemed strengthened. For beyond those two good, fair women, at first I could scarce believe it, so great was my joy, I saw my beloved herself smiling sadly, but tenderly, at where I sat. She smiled, but I knew she did not really see me. One of the ladies did, though, and she was describing me to my darling in a low, quiet voice. My darling seemed pleased, for it seemed to confirm what the man had told her. She had been telling these ladies what a remarkable experience she had, and how it seemed to her like a strange dream. I could have cried out to her then that I was truly there, that I still lived, still loved her, and was trusting in her love for me, but I could not move. Some spell was over me, some power I could dearly feel was holding me back. Again, this is for his own good. He's going through a learning curve here. And then those two kind ladies spoke, and I knew they were not angels yet, for they were still in their earthly bodies and could see and speak to them. They said much of what this kind good man had done, so as to the hope there was for sinners like me. The same voice which had bidden me to enter now asked would I like one of the ladies to write a message for me, and I said, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Then I spoke my words, and the Spirit caused the lady to write them down. I said to my beloved that I still lived, still loved her. I bid her never to forget me, never to seek to think of me, for I required all her love and help to sustain me. I was ever the same to her, though now I was weak and helpless, and could not make her see me. And she gave me such sweet words in return, I cannot write them down, for they are too sacred to me, and still rest in my heart forevermore. The period that followed this interview was one of deep sleep for me. I was so exhausted that when I left the room, I wandered on a little and then sank down upon the ground in deep, dreamless unconsciousness. What did it matter where I rested when all was night around me? So, as a spirit, you don't really need sleep, but he, as a very low spirit and exhausted mentally, they're probably letting him sleep to rest and help to recharge his brain. I'll carry on. But before I end, so her love for him is remarkable. And I'd like to tell another story. I'll tell it pretty quickly. And it was a story of a man and woman who were married. And this man had a business partner. And his business partner wanted to seduce his wife. And then he started lying to the man, telling his wife was, you can't trust her, and all these terrible things. Of course, he started not believing his wife, thinking she was doing things to him. And finally, his business partner even hired a guy to go into her bedroom and pretend he was hiding there. And of course, when he saw that guy, he tried to shoot him. Thankfully, he missed. And then he said, "No, wife, you're out of here. You can't see the children." And he, during those times, he had complete control, really mean, and just sent her away and said, "Nope, can't see the kids anymore." So he traveled in Europe for a while and had the kids raised by, other family. And when he came back after 2 years, he found his wife had died of tuberculosis. And he felt terrible, but he did what he did. Then his business partner, years later, his business partner died. And on his deathbed, he confessed to what he had done. His business partner asked him to forgive him. He said, "No, I'm not going to forgive you." Then he felt terrible. He had nightmares. He just felt he was horrible. Then he died. And he was in the lower zone because he just felt that he did the most worstless thing possible. He thought ill of his wife. He ruined her life. He hurt his children's life. And so, but what am I trying to say? His wife, the one he had so mistreated, found him and helped raise him in the spirit world. And he was in the spiritual hospital, per se, outpost in the lower zone. He wasn't allowed to go higher yet. And she would come and visit him. And then he was asked, "Well, can't she stay with you?" And he said, "No. Look," he said, "in my last life, I did not, think that what was close to me was precious enough. I gave it up just because of gossip. And I don't deserve to be with her yet, but I'm trying. I'm getting there. So no, we're not. She can come visit me sometimes, but we must live apart until I've learned to really value what God has given me." So here's another one of a wonderful woman helping this discarnated spirit. Of course, she was in the spirit world when that happened. So let me carry on what he said. "How long my sleep lasted, I know not. At that period, I had no means of counting time, save by the amount of suffering and misery through which I had passed. From my slumbers, I awoke refreshed in a measure, and with all my senses stronger in me than before. I could move more rapidly, my limbs felt stronger and freer, and I was now conscious of a desire to eat I had not felt before. My longing grew so great that I went in search of food, and for a long time could find none anywhere. At last I found what looked like hard dry bread, a few crusts only, but I was glad to eat them, whereupon I felt more satisfied. Here, I may say that spirits do not eat the spiritual counterpart of your food, do feel hunger and thirst, as keen to them as your appetite are to you on earth, although neither our food nor our drink would be any more visible to your material sight than our spiritual bodies are. And yet for us they possess objective reality. Had I been a drunkard or a lover of the pleasure of the table in my earthly body, I should much sooner have felt the cravings of appetite. As it was, nature with me had never been easily satisfied. And though I had first turned from those dry crusts in disgust, a little reflection told me that I now had no way of procuring anything. I was like a beggar, and had better content myself with a beggar's fare. Now, a spirit doesn't need to eat, but he wants to. And therefore, he's saying, yeah, they still eat. And yes, on the lower zone, they still eat. As you go higher and higher in heaven, you absorb the atmosphere, you drink the water. You do not need food per se. My thoughts had now turned to my beloved again, and the thoughts carried my spirit with them, so that I found myself entering once more to the room where I had last seen her and the two ladies. The time I seemed to pass in at once and was received by the two spirit men whom I could but very faintly see. A veil seemed to hang between us, though which I saw those two spirit men. The ladies and my beloved, I was told that I might again give a message to her, though the lady who had written my words before, through the lady. I was so anxious to try if I could make my darling write down any words herself, as I'd seen her guardian spirit do, that I was allowed to try. To my disappointment, I found I could not do it. She was deaf to all I said. She hadn't had the power yet. And I had to give up that idea and let the lady write for me as before. After I'd given my message, I rested for a short time and watched my beloved one's sweet face, as I had been wont to do in other happier days. My musings were interrupted by one of those spirit men, a grave, handsome young man he seemed to be as far as I could see him. He spoke to me in a quiet, kindly voice and said that if I truly desired to write my own words through my darling herself, it would be well for me to join a brotherhood of penitents who, like myself, desired to follow out the better way. And with them I should learn many things of which I was yet ignorant, and which would help me to fit myself to control her mind as well as give her the privilege I thought of being with her at times while she dwelt on earth. The way of repentance was hard, he said, very hard, the steps many, the toil and suffering great. But it led to a fair and happy land at last, where I should rest in happiness such as I could not dream of now. So he must have been one of these spirits who were really helping other spirits. He assured me, even as the kind earthly men had done, that my deformed body, which I was still so anxious to hide from my beloved one's eyes, would change as my spirit changed, though I should once more be fair to look upon, such as she would no longer grieve to see. Were I to remain upon the earth plane as I now was, I should most likely be drawn back into my former haunts of so-called pleasure. And in that atmosphere of spiritual degradation, I should soon lose the power to be near my darling at all. For her own sake, those who guarded her would be obliged to exclude me. On the other hand, were I to join this brotherhood, which was one of hope and endeavor, I should so be helped, so strengthened, and so taught, that when in due course my time came to return to the earth plane, I should have acquired a strength and an armor that could resist its temptations. Now, this is a lot like what other spiritist writings I have read. Right here is a kind of what we call an NGO, right? A non-government organization that he's probably part of this brotherhood who helps other spirits. Just like in the book Memoirs of a Suicide, when Camilo Branco committed suicide in the late 1800s, went to the Mary of Nazareth Hospital. That was all about helping suicides look at their past life, understand their past life, help them be more successful in their next life, and it actually tracked them in life after life to help them repair the damage they did by damaging their perispirit. Right, when you commit suicide, you don't just damage your physical body, you damage your perispirit. And believe me, don't want to commit suicide. It solves nothing. You're in a much worse position, and then you've got to come back in your next life and repair what you've done. So this brotherhood is there to help him. And there are a lot of these organizations in the spirit world that are trying to help errant spirits become better and learn. So I'll carry on. I listened to the words of this grave, courteous spirit with wonder and a growing desire to know more of this brotherhood of whom he spoke, and begged he would take me to them. This he assured he would do, and he would also explain that I should be there of my own free will and choice only. Did I desire at any time to leave, I could do so at once. All are free in the spirit world, he said. Very true. Your free will is always respected. All must follow only where their own wishes and desires lead them. If you study to cultivate the higher desires, means will be given you to attain them, and you will be strengthened with such help and strength as you may need. You are the one who has never learned the power of prayer. You will learn it now, for all things come by earnest prayer, whether you are conscious that you pray or not. For good or for evil, your desires are as prayers, and call around you good or evil powers to answer them for you. This is everything read in this conforms completely with Spiritism and what they tell us. And yes, and in life too, and I talk about this in my book, The Seventh Sense of Spiritism, as you want to ascend and improve yourself, you will be given opportunities, you will be given help to improve yourself. And again, they say the power of prayer. If you desire something, you think about it, you really want it, especially if it's good, right? If it's not good, then that prayer doesn't go very many places. It may actually boomerang against you. That desire is interpreted as a prayer. So you don't need to say, "Oh God, I'm praying," right? You can just say, "Oh, I really want, I really want that job. I can help my family. I can help these other people, or I want to solve this problem. So we can help these other people do something, right?" Those help will come in some sort of form. So, as I was again growing weary and exhausted, he suggested that I should bid adieu to my darling for a time. He explained that I should gain more strength as well as permit her to do so if I left her for a time, and I was to remain in this place of which he spoke. It would also be well that she should not try to write for 3 months, as her mediumistic powers had greatly tried, and if she did not rest them, she would be much impaired, while I would require all that time to learn even the simple lessons needful before I could control her. Ah me, how hard it seemed to us both to make this promise. But she set me the example, and I could not but follow it. If she would try to be strong and patient, so should I. And I registered a vow that if God I had so long forgotten would remember and pardon me now, I would give all my life and all my powers to undo the wrongs that I had done. And so it was that I left for a time the troubled earth of the spirit world, of which I had yet seen so little, but in which I was as yet to see and suffer so much. As I left the room to go with my new guide, I turned to my love and waved my hand in farewell, and asked that the good angels and the God I dared not pray to for myself might bless her and keep her safe forevermore. And the last thing I saw was her tender eyes following me with a look of love and hope, which was to sustain me through many a weary, painful hour. So, that is the end of that chapter. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. And I hope that this gives people, more understanding of Spiritism. And if you are new to Spiritism and you want to understand Spiritism, I have on my website, nwspiritism.com, in PDF version, Spiritism 101, the third revelation. It's like less than 100 pages, I think. And it gives you a quick introduction to Spiritism, talks about the basic tenets, what it's about, and also it shows you all my other books I have. Also, I reference other books. You can also get books by Alan Kardec. He's the codifier of Spiritism. I recommend you can get that in PDF. But I have Spiritism 101 in PDF, also in French. I also have it in Kindle, paperback, and audio format if you want to do that. But of course, but you can get it in PDF for free. So I would recommend that if you are interested in learning more about Spiritism. Spiritism explains so much. It explains why you are here. It explains what you are seeing. But if you want to know more about the spirit world, I suggest you read, I have a series of 3 books. Book 1, Heaven Below. Book 2, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, all about spirits. And Book 3, How We Are Guided by Spirits. And it talks about heaven, the lower zone, Jesus Christ in heaven. The next book talks about spirits, which are attributes of the spirits, how you rise, what you're composed of, what are you capable of, which is amazing. And the third book is how we're guided individually and as races, nations, and cultures. We're all guided all the time. Everything that's going on right now, the spirit world knows and knows what's going to happen. And they're guiding people to a certain. Now, sometimes you say, well, you've been guided horrible. Think of the communists in China or the communists in North Korea. They're torturing people. Well, it's all there for a lesson, right? It's not. To us, it's not good, but you have to look at the long-term effect. The spirits who are part of those regimes had to learn that, probably because they oppressed people before, and those people are now being oppressed. So besides, if you want to know why there's chaos and not good things on the earth, I told you that in what I just read. The spirit world always honors our free will. We are free to be as cruel as we want. We're also free to be as nice as we want. But when we're cruel, we will then, that karma will affect us, and then we will experience that, close to that, in our next life or in our present life. So anyway, I want to say God bless everyone who's been here, and come back to me every Sunday and Tuesday night, and we will live stream and then check out my other videos. Anyway, God bless.